students. All right, so based on what we put together for this fictional scenario for the best or worst meal and all the components where I rolled the dice and all of that, I have written a sample intro. So again, this is just a sample. This doesn't mean that you need to write about a dinner with your coworkers. No, you might, wait, I didn't do that. No, of course not. But sometimes people might misunderstand, so that's why I wanted to clarify. You will be writing about either your best or your worst meal that is your own experience. This is just to give you like an example. All right, so I'm going to read through the intro that I wrote, and then I'm going to break it down and explain it, and then we'll go over some sample topic sentences for this intro and thesis. All right, so again, this is paragraph 1. This is the intro. It looks a little long when I write it out in marker, but when you type it out, I counted, and I think it's only about 7 sentences, but we'll look at it again and count. But as long as you have like, I mean, it shouldn't be less than really 4, but somewhere between approximately 4 and 10 sentences. So those layers, they can be a little longer, shouldn't be shorter, but they could be a little longer as needed to give clarity. So it's not math. I mean, this is a guideline. So, we don't have, exactly 2 sentences for this, but that should give you a guideline. So about 4 to 10 sentences, double spaced on the page. You're looking at about 1/4 to a page to 1/2 a page. Not so much 3/4 of a page unless you have a longer paper, but we only have 3 to 5 pages. So again, that's also the requirement: 3 to 5 pages, double spaced, and 12-point font. Okay, to clarify that, and you can jot that down just in case it's not in the prompt, although I hope it is. All right, so here we go. I'm going to read through what I put together, and then I'll kind of break it down. All right, so here we go. Last year, after working at my job at a local retail store for a year, I decided to invite my coworkers over to my house to dinner. I had recently been learning to cook, and this would be a great time to try out some new dishes and enjoy an evening with the people I work with at the store. What I neglected to consider was that many of my coworkers do not get along with each other, and that most of them are very opinionated. Even though I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to flip it now. Even though my special meal was delicious, I did not enjoy it at all because of my bickering guests, who grew increasingly angry at one another as the evening went on. While I still enjoy cooking, I have decided to be more careful about who I invite for dinner in the future. The dinner I hosted for my coworkers was the worst meal I have ever experienced. Due to all the strife between my guests, and from this experience, I have found that food does not always bring people together, and that too many opinionated people can ruin even the most delectable of meals. Based on my experience with my disastrous coworker dinner, I have learned to invite only good-natured guests to my table. All right, and so that is our sample thesis. All right, so I'm going to break this down. I'm going to count again just to clarify how many sentences this is. We've got 1 here, 2 here, 3. 4, 5, 6. Oh wait, still 5. Sorry, those are the comma. 5, 6, 7. It's 7 sentences. So that's pretty typical. It's not going to be 2 pages when you type it out. This is on big giant paper with a marker, right? So that 7 sentences is pretty typical. All right, so I'm going to break it down again. I'm going to go through it a little more slowly, and I'm going to explain the different layers. All right, so it says, Again, this is the background. This is the background part. So remember I said your first layer really should be background. You need to give the backstory. You need to explain how this meal came to be or why you were there or whatever. You need to give that to lead the reader to where you're at. All right. So it says, last year, after working at my job at a local retail store for a year, I decided to invite my coworkers over to my house to dinner. I had recently been learning to cook, and this would be a great time to try out some new dishes and enjoy an evening with the people I work with at the store. That is some background information. That is why, so the dinner was at, in this case, our home. Why did we have it at our home with our coworkers? We explain that. Okay, so we don't leave it to the reader to wonder about it. We just explain it. But notice that only took 2 sentences to give that background, okay? But it's essential information for the reader. All right, and then it says, so now we start kind of giving a little more background, but we're starting to what I call steer the car. We're starting to head toward our thesis. It's now background that's moving in the direction of where we want to go, where we're taking the reader, right? So we're going like this with it. So it says, what I neglected to consider was that many of my coworkers do not get along with each other and that most of them are very opinionated. So we already know from our brainstorm and all that we're going to be talking about the worst meal, right? So we need to start heading things in that direction. We're still in background, but we're starting to get to our point, steering the car. All right, so even though my special meal was delicious, I did not enjoy it at all because of my bickering guests who grew increasingly angry at one another as the evening went on. So again, we're giving that background, but we're getting to the point that the food was good, but that was not the problem. But again, it's the coworkers, right? So we're explaining that more. We're not leaving that to chance. We are explaining. While I still enjoy, but I want to back up for just a second. We're explaining it, but we are not going into the nitty-gritty details. That is going to be in our body paragraphs, right? So we're giving an overview, a general overview of the situation, but we are talking about our specific situation. Okay, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So it says, while I still enjoy cooking, I have decided to be more careful about who I invite for dinner in the future. Now we're getting into the explanation. We're into the second layer now. So we have given the background. The reader understands this meal was taking place at our home with coworkers, and it wasn't going so well because of the coworkers not getting along. Now we're starting to steer into the transition part, the transition layer that is going to connect the background to our thesis. So this says, it's kind of starting to talk about and explain the thesis before we get there. So it says, while I still enjoy cooking, I have decided to be more careful about who I invite for dinner in the future. The dinner I hosted for my coworkers was the worst meal I have ever experienced. Due to all the strife between my guests and from this experience, I have found that food does not always bring people together and that too many opinionated people can ruin even the most delectable of meals. Still a transition sentence. That's right before the thesis. We're explaining the thesis before the thesis so that we are leading the reader from the driveway to our front door so that it doesn't come as just a shock to them. Again, it shouldn't be just background information and then boom, there's a thesis, right? It's right? No, that's what you would be doing to your reader. Like all of a sudden they're like, wait, what? Where'd that come from? Don't do that, right? Lead them. So your transition sentences are explanation that connects background and your thesis. And we have a few sentences in this case, two. All right, so then it says, based on my experience with my disastrous coworker dinner, I have learned to only invite good-natured guests to my table. That's our thesis. So what's our topic? This is how you can test to make sure you have a good thesis. You should be able to find your topic in your thesis statement, and you should be able to find your idea in your thesis statement. Both parts need to be there so you can check your work, just like in math. You can check and make sure they're both there. So do we have our topic? Yes, because it's the disastrous coworker dinner, right? That's our topic. Our idea is, here's what we learned. I have learned to only invite good-natured guests to my table. That's what we learned. You do not have to use the exact word learned, but you can, right? But something you discovered, something you found out. There are many ways to phrase this, but you need a topic and an idea. What you learned is also your idea because it's unique to you, right? Someone else would learn something else from that experience, and many variations, again, because we are all individuals, so we're going to have different ideas. All right, so again, give that background, but in the background part needs to be a general overview, general information about your specific situation in a narrative essay. So I am going to take this away right now. I actually have some sample reasons written down, but I am going to just write that down because that's really important. So narrative, for a narrative intro, narrative essay, in your intro, you need general background info about your specific situation. So, narrative essay where you're telling an aspect of your own experience, you need, in the intro, you need general background information, but about your specific situation. So, you need to give the overview that leads to your thesis, but you don't want to do what I call the philosophical intro, where you talk about, you say something like this. This is just an example. This is not, something anyone's written, but just where you say something like, many of us have had different types of meals, and some meals are really good and some are really bad. And I've really thought about what these meals mean, whether they're good or bad or somewhere in the middle. And we're all faced with, what should I eat? When should I eat it? Who should I eat it with? We all have to decide what to do about what we're going to eat. And this is something that is universal to all. Okay, but we don't know anything from that because that's your philosophy, so to speak. But save that for philosophy class because we do not know from that where the meal took place, who was there, what you ate, and what you thought about it or learned about it. We know none of that, right? So do not do that. What happens when, I think that is part of your brainstorm, your discovery process. And because what happens when we do that is often we have two intros. We have the philosophical intro and then we have the real intro, but you can't do that. You need one paragraph for your intro, not two, because then the next paragraph needs to be a body paragraph that supports the thesis. So don't do that, right? I mean, it's very natural. It's very human. We need to sort of write our way into our ideas. But do that as you're just getting your ideas down, not in your paragraph, right? So you need to have general background information, but it has to be about your specific situation in a narrative essay, okay? So it can't be so general that it's kind of vague and as I say, philosophical, right? So just, again, save that for philosophy class, I guess, if it works, right? But otherwise, no. Okay, so, but you do need to give the background about that situation, okay? And then you need to give that explanation, and you do need the thesis. So, again, I'm just going to show that. I'm not going to read through it again, but I'm just going to show that again really quick. We have our background that leads to the transition sentences, right? Background, we still got background here, sorry. Transition starts in here, and then we've got our thesis. I'm going to read the thesis again that I came up with for this scene. Based on my experience with my disastrous coworker dinner, I have learned to only invite good-natured guests to my table. So you should be able to read your thesis statement and know that's my thesis. So you should know that that is your thesis and be able to identify it as your thesis. So here's what I want you to do. When you turn in your essay, I want you to highlight your thesis statement in paragraph 1. We can do that on the computer now with all the snazzy tools that we have. You can even choose different colors. So just highlight it. You get to pick the color, pick any color you want, but highlight it. Make that stand out so I know and you know that's my thesis. Because what I find is that if we don't check and make sure that we know which sentence is our thesis, that sometimes this happens. Please let there be a thesis in there. I think it's in there somewhere, please. Right? No, don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to me. Right? So put your best thesis forward by knowing which one it is. Because I think doing this process of the highlighting it forces you to pick a sentence that is your thesis and make sure that it's there. All right. And then again, check your work. Make sure it has your topic. Make sure it has your idea about your topic. All right. So that's our intro. And again, this is my process I personally do. Is what called my plan of attack. I write the intro first, and then I know where I'm going. I have a thesis, etc. So then what I do next is I write out some sample ideas for topic sentences, which are, in this case, my reasons. My reasons that I think what I think in my thesis, my ideas. They have to support the thesis. They have to come under the umbrella of the thesis, so they can't be going in a different direction. But they're often reasons. In this case, reasons the meal was so bad. And that in this case, and it all has to work with in this situation that the coworkers were really the problem, right? And then you write down your reasons. Every reason gets a paragraph. Every reason gets a paragraph. The reasons will turn into your topic sentences, one per body paragraph. So that now you have a plan of attack. So again, you've got an intro, you've got a thesis, and you have your body paragraphs planned out. And so here's what I wrote down for the reasons. And again, it's the thesis says that the reason this dinner didn't work out so well was the coworkers not getting along, right? So you could even think of these different ideas for body paragraphs for topic sentences as categories. Like here are 3 different categories of why this dinner was bad, right? So in this case, I put problems at work, that the coworkers are arguing about problems at work. My next category I came up with was politics, that they have different ideas about that, and now they're arguing about that. And finally, they're even arguing about the food. Yikes, right? This dinner was bad. We have to support that, right? So this is what I came up with. If when you're doing your own paper, if there was a 4th or 5th reason, just jot it down. Because it's better to have more than less. If they're all really good and you have a lot to say about them, you can even add an additional body paragraph. Totally fine. That could be very helpful. Or you might find that some you don't have as much to say about as you thought, and then you can just narrow it down. Anything like that. So what I would do is if I could think of an example for each one, I would do that there. So problems at work. Might be, they have different ideas about the new boss, for example. Like that might be what pops into my head. Politics, it could be the, upcoming presidential election, different ideas about that, right? In the food, it could be something like, somebody has to put ketchup on something, someone tells them they shouldn't be doing that, or whatever. I mean, I don't have a specific one in mind, so I'm gonna put a question mark. And that is exactly how that can happen. So I think that's a good example. Like, okay, I can think of an example for this one. I can think of an example for this one. Oh, I can't think of an example for this one. That's okay. Don't worry. Don't stress out. Just put like a question mark or something that it's going to come to you, likely, right? Or not. Or if it doesn't, I guess you're gonna have to think of another reason. But that can happen, and don't let it stress you out. Just know that it's a process, and this is all designed to empower you and not to stress you out. All right, so once you get your 3 reasons, this is what I do, is I develop these, in each one, again, gets a paragraph. So I turn these reasons into topic sentences. Your reasons become your topic sentences. So, for example, here we go with paragraph 2. So I'm not going to write out the whole essay, because this would be the longest video, like, ever, and you guys would be like, wait, what's happening? And I fell asleep, right? I don't want to put you to sleep. So what I am going to do is go over some sample topic sentences, and then we'll discuss via video, possible examples, how to handle that, and move on to the next topic sentence. That, I think, we kind of like an expanded outline, really. All right. So paragraph 2, again, I believe I mentioned this before in the last video, but before your topic sentences, you really should have a transition word or phrase, that will help you to transition the reader to your point. In the writer's workshops, I use first, second, and finally as my transition words before the topic sentence. So, because I just like to keep it consistent. And if you want to use those, that is my gift to you. You just grab those and roll with it. But there are many others to use. In chapter 3, in Steps to Writing Well, there is a literal box of them that you can choose from, that the author has. Oh, sorry, missing. Where'd she go? Woohoo! So looking for that page. But the author has a really nice box of different transition words and phrase in the chapter on paragraph development that I think is quite helpful. So I am looking for that box right now, but if I can't find it, I just promise you that it is in there. And if we were in class, I would have someone look for it, but can't do that right now. All right, so I know it's there. But I can't find it right now. I know it's in the body. Oh, got it. Okay, so page 73. If you look at page 73 in the textbook, Steps to Writing Well, of course, chapter 3, it's in there. And there are like a great many of them. So for example, when the sequence one is what I mentioned first, you could do first, second, and third. You could do all consecutive order. Finally, like I mentioned, moreover, also, in addition, next, then, etc. Furthermore, right? So they're all in there. And if you feel like you're always using the same ones and you want to mix it up, you could just choose a different one from the box. Or if you have gotten out of the habit of doing that, you want to get back in the habit, because I mentioned that I personally just thought it was really formulaic at one point in my student career, and but it is formulaic. It's a formula for your success, because essay writing is essentially a formula. But once you know the formula, you can write any essay. You can write a 10-page essay, you can write a 20-page essay, you can, like to paraphrase Dr. Seuss, you can write an essay in a box, you can write an essay with a fox, right? So my point is, once you know that formula, you are set up for success, and I want you to be set up for success, all right? So here we go. So paragraph 2, how we would do, we said problems at work, right? So I'm going to do this. First, I'm going to turn this into my topic sentence. First, Okay, this is what I've written. So I've taken this idea and I've turned it into a topic sentence to start paragraph 2. So for example, first, here's my transition word, right? I'm going to go this way. I think I'm like peeking at you, right? All right, so first, my dinner was so difficult because my coworkers started arguing about problems at work. So you still have to have that connection to your thesis, right? So you have to make sure you're on the same topic, right? And this idea supports the bigger idea that the dinner was bad because of the bickering coworkers, right? So first, my dinner was so difficult because my coworkers started arguing about problems at work. Okay, so that's an idea. It has to be an idea, not a fact, right? So a fact might be, first, my coworkers have different ideas about our boss. Well, that is more of a fact because you could probably verify that this coworker has this idea and this coworker has that idea, but instead it's phrased as an idea. First, my dinner was so difficult because my coworkers started arguing about problems at work. All right, and it's a reason. That's another way to think of it. So then that's our first layer in the body paragraph, English lasagna, right? This is our first layer, is our topic sentence. Can the topic sentence be somewhere else in the body paragraph? Yes, and in fact, in the next chapter of Steps to Writing, well, there are a lot of examples of that. But very traditionally, the topic sentence is often the first one in the body paragraph. Sometimes you need like more background, like a bridge from the last paragraph to this one that introduces the idea, and then you would have your topic sentence second. That can happen. But if you are struggling with topic sentences, like a lot of students are, if you find yourself stressed out by topic sentences, like a lot of students are, I strongly suggest putting it first in your paragraph, because then you know it's there. You can just check it off, it's there, and then you move on to your next layer, which is the explanation. So then you need to explain. So you are going to explain this, right? This is topic sentence is always one sentence, kind of like your thesis, right? It's one sentence. Okay? Your explanation is about 2 to 3 sentences. 2 to 3 sentences. All right, so you have to explain that, right? So you've got to explain what the situation is, that why everybody's arguing about problems at work. So it might be something like, recently we got a new boss, and some of my coworkers really like him or her, you know, whoever it is. Like, I'm just going to pick one. Some of my coworkers really like our new boss, and some of them really just dislike him. And then you could explain that, right? And then, for example, you need to give a specific example of the argument that was taking place, right? So give a little story, a little, you know, some specific details about that. So I'm going to put here example, 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, so we've got our we have our topic sentence layer, we have our explanation layer, and now we have our example layer. So before your example, you need another transition phrase, and this type is called a signal phrase. Well, that's one way to describe it. One term that's used. So the signal phrase is a type of transition word or phrase that says example coming up, example coming up. It's great for the reader because it's like a flag to them. Oh, cool, I'm going to get an example now. I'm going to get a picture of what this looks like at the dinner, right? For you as a writer, it's good too, because it reminds you to add the example, give the evidence, give the little story, right? That is, there's that old cliche about a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's kind of true in a certain way, and it's true here. They need to see it. That the reader needs to see what was going on, and your little example, I say little, not because it's not important, it's very important, but I mean, you have to confine it to the paragraph. You don't need to go on for pages, right? But you just need 2 to 3 sentences-ish, could be 4, but more or less. So that's when you say, for example, or specifically, or for instance, right? And then you give the little story. So I'm actually going to write that out. This time I'm going to say, for example, comma, right? You're going to give that story. So if it was like, my coworker, and then, you can, if you want, you can list these people's names. Nobody's going to read this about me, but my coworker Susie and my other coworker Bob, they just can't agree about the new boss, and they started shouting at each other about his methods about cleaning the store, and how one thinks it's a great method and the other hates it. And you can give the details. You can actually give dialogue. Dialogue can be evidence. Dialogue can really give that detail and make it come to life, right? That's what you're doing. You're making that come to life. So after the example, if you would like to, and if it comes to you, you could add some analysis, meaning your analysis is, again, your focused thoughts about this issue. So I'm going to put that in there, but I'm going to say something about it. So analysis would also be, if you are doing that 2 to 3 sentences, again, your focused thoughts about this issue. It can be kind of fun because it's kind of like your philosophy about this, how this really didn't work out very well with people having such divergent opinions about the boss, and fighting about these work conditions or whatever. I am not requiring that with this paper. So if you just have your clear topic sentence and you explain it and you have a clear example, we're good. All right. But if you want to reach for the next rung on the ladder, you could add that analysis, and that's going to be great practice. All right. So that's paragraph 2. Again, I'm going to flip this, and we're going to go to the next body paragraph, and this would be paragraph 3. And I'm going to use, like I said, the transition word second, because that is what I like to do to stay consistent. And you can, if you want to use those, you can do that. You can mix it up, but don't forget the transition words. Again, it's a formula for your success. So second, okay. So here, this is going to be the next reason, right? So it supports the thesis. It's still about the dinner. It's still about the coworkers not getting along, and that's what made this dinner a big problem. So it says, second, my special dinner was such a terrible experience because my coworkers started arguing about politics. All right, that's a reason. It's an idea. It supports the thesis, and it's just one sentence. All right, and then we would, again, this is the topic sentence. It's one sentence, okay, layers. Then you would need to explain in about 2 to 3 sentences and give your example in about 2 to 3 sentences. So how would you explain that? Well, you might talk about with the upcoming presidential election in November, some of my coworkers are Joe Biden, Kamala Harris supporters, and some of them are Trump supporters, and the conversation became so heated that people were screaming at each other and calling each other names, and no one could even hear each other off because of all the screaming and yelling. Whoa, right? so you're going to explain that, right? And then you are going to give the example. So that's the more specific details. That's the little story. For example, my coworker Ashley started shouting at my coworker Joel something, whatever, right? Whatever it was that, and he shouted back, something else, right? Fill in the blank, right? So, but you're giving the story, right? But it's still following that formula, supporting the topic sentence, which also supports the thesis. And again, if you want to, you can add that analysis piece, which would be another 2 to 3 sentences, and that would be your focus thoughts on this issue, kind of tying it together. But again, for this paper, I am not requiring you to do that. But sometimes it flows in very nicely, and if it does, well, don't hesitate, because that's really going to just get you ready for that next level. All right? So, and then we would do the next one, paragraph 4, next body paragraph. Paragraph 4, and this is my favorite transition word that I'm going to use, and it says finally. All right, I'll talk about why it's my favorite again in a minute, but I think I mentioned that last time. I'll say it again. Finally, sorry, it's getting a little hard to write on this since that that cardboard flew away. Actually. Okay, here's our last topic sentence. This is my favorite transition word. I mentioned this before. It's called finally. The reason it's my favorite, again, is because it helps your reader that they go, oh, finally, that sounds like a really important point. We're at the last important point here. And it helps you as a reader, not as a reader, maybe it helps you, but as a writer, it helps you to stay on track and know that finally, this is my last point. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? I'll end of this essay. So I think it sounds kind of official, finally. So finally, this dinner was so upsetting because my coworkers actually started arguing about the food. Oh no, right? But so I saved that one for last because it sounded like totally horrible, right? So at any rate, but it's a reason, it's an idea, right? And it supports the thesis. So that's our topic sentence. It's one sentence. Again, you need to explain in 2 to 3 sentences, and you need your example in 2 to 3 sentences. So you would explain that because the reader doesn't know. They weren't there, so they're like, what do you mean they started arguing with food? That sounds really bad. Well, yeah, it was, right? So you're going to explain that some of my coworkers thought condiments should be placed on some of the dishes, and some said that was going to ruin the dish. Some insisted that we had to put the salad dressing on before, and some said that that was going to, not be good for some people, and they were arguing about different aspects of the food, or whatever, right? You're going to explain that basically in 2 to 3 sentences. Then you need to give your example. So, for example, and again, you can say, one of my coworkers started accusing another of taking too much of the salad and started shouting at her that you're taking too much salad, there's not going to be enough left for anybody else. And that other coworker said, fine, you can have the salad, I don't even want it, and threw the salad bowl at her, and salad was flying everywhere. So whatever it was, right, describe it, the exact things that started happening with the food, right, about the argument with the food. Right? So you're going to explain that. Again, if you would like to offer some analysis, 2 to 3 sentences, you could then put it there. But notice again, we're layering. We've got our topic sentence layer. We have our explanation layer. We have our example layer. And if you would like to, you could add your analysis layer. All right? So this is how it's all working together. So I'm going to just kind of reiterate that again, you need your clear introduction, so you need to give that background, the backstory, right? And then you need to transition to your thesis, so you need general background information about your specific situation. you need to transition to your thesis, in which you start connecting your background to your thesis, and then you need that thesis statement, all in paragraph 1. That's got to be in paragraph 1. Then paragraph 2, topic sentence, which is also a reason that supports your thesis. Then you need your example. I'm sorry, no, back up. You need your explanation, then your example, and then if you want to, you can offer the analysis. And then, rinse and repeat, right? So we've got every body paragraph, and you must have 3 body paragraphs. You can have more. You can have 4 body paragraphs. That's totally fine, but you cannot have only 2 body paragraphs. If you only have 2, you have 1 more to go. All right, so that will be not be complete. All right, so then any essay that you ever write, you've got to have 5 paragraphs. They call it the 5-paragraph essay, right? That's like the standard. So you got to have your 5 paragraphs. If you don't, you got to go back and write one, right? All right, so you've got your body paragraphs. Each one needs a topic sentence, an idea, a reason that supports your thesis. It's got to have the layer of explaining that topic sentence, because again, the reader wasn't there. They may not know what you really mean by that. 2 to 3 sentences. Then you need your example in 2 to 3 sentences. And again, if you would like to kick it up to the next level, you could add some analysis. All right, so we're going to move on from all of that, and now we're going to talk about the conclusion. So your conclusion should also be 4 to 10 sentences-ish, right? What you want to do in this conclusion is, again, to touch back on the thesis. And I'm going to, I can't spell today. Okay, thesis. Not word for word. Do not do it word for word. Talk about that again in a minute. You want to give closure. You want to wrap it up. And really important, no new information. I'll talk about that. One option, not the only thing that you could do, is you could summarize your topic sentences. Topic sentences. This is optional, but it's one way. All right, so let's go over what to do in the conclusion. Touch back on your thesis. Go back to it, but do not repeat it word for word. This is not a rerun, and it will read like a rerun. That's when people say about being repetitive, that's repetitive, right? So we don't want that, right? So, but you do want to touch back on your thesis. You want to say the same idea in new words, in new phrasing, okay? Then we're still layering. You want to make sure that you are giving some closure. Wrap it up. Tie a bow on it. Make sure it all just comes to a satisfying end, right? It should not be that you just get to your last reason and then you just kind of slap on the ending and, and the reader's like, wait, what? What's happening here? I don't understand how this worked out, right? They shouldn't feel that way. They should feel like it's all been wrapped up, that they know what happened. They know how it worked out. You go back to your thesis to emphasize that point. It shouldn't be like they just come to the end, like in a jarring way, like they're looking over a cliff, like, ah! And they're like, whoa, what's happening? No, don't do that to them. It's confusing and stressful even, so don't stress them out. Give some closure, wrap it up. And no new info. This is hugely important. I mentioned this before in the last video, but we are very complex. We have wonderful brains, and these wonderful brains can think about so many things at the same time, and that is super awesome because we are able to look at things from different sides, and this is fabulous. But not in your conclusion. You can't look at it from a different side in the aspect of you've got to support your thesis. You have to match your conclusion to your intro. They should match. So if you give new information, that is super confusing to your reader, and it will not give you credibility with your reader. So again, I mentioned this on the last video, but this is not like breaking news. CNN, breaking news. We have no, you're not gonna and then you talk maybe, as an example, someone could say, But I don't know. I decided to go ahead and invite some of my coworkers over again. Actually, I had them over for a big party last week. No, no, no. It just save that for another paper. It doesn't match. It doesn't connect, right? So no new info. You don't want to add a new example at this point. Again, here's another example of where my coworkers were arguing about the food. Or no, that's put that in that category. It goes in that category, not this one. This is the wrap up category, right? You can choose to summarize your topic sentences. You just re-emphasize those reasons and go over them again so the reader understands that those are each important. You do not have to do that, but it's a very nice method. It can be very effective. And you just want to wrap it up. Basically, you can choose to offer a final thought, but if you do that, make sure it's consistent with your with what you've already said. It's not something new. It's not new information. It's just what I call getting to the heart of the matter. What is underneath? Why is this so important? That you learned this, that you learned that you're going to be very thoughtful about who you invite over to dinner, right? So it's got to be a final thought would be just so what's at the heart of that, what's underneath that, and why is it so important. I mean, that's what you could tell your reader. So that's that. I'll put that in as an option. Final thought. I hope you can read that. Final thought, but know that it's optional. It's just one method. But it can't be new info. It can't be like a final thought that is new info. Don't do that. And what I suggest is, again, as a method, when you turn your paper in, read over the whole paper. You will catch things. Try to do it with fresh eyes, which bears mentioning. Try to start the paper a little ahead of time, not at midnight the night before, ideally, because then you can look at it and you can catch things that may have gone awry. But in addition to that, read just your intro and just your conclusion. Make sure they match, because again, it can go a little off track without us really realizing that. All right, so I'm going to put this in the assignment category, but you do have an assignment for this writer's workshop, and the assignment is to write a conclusion for this intro. I'm putting the intro back. So you're going to write a conclusion for this intro. I don't mean that you need to submit ahead of time a conclusion for your own paper. No, you'll just turn that in with the actual paper. But this is the homework assignment, is to make you part of this workshop, and get your essay writing skills kind of working, and that muscle working in that way, and your conclusion muscles working. I want you to write a conclusion for this intro. So again, the intro of us inviting the coworkers over and how that went, right? And it was disastrous, we said, and what I'm going to flip to the thesis, that our thesis was, based on my experience with my disastrous coworker dinner, I have learned to only invite good-natured guests to my table. Your conclusion would be supporting that idea. It would be between 4 and 7 sentences. It could sum up the topic sentences, just kind of re-emphasizing that thesis, giving closure. You could offer a final thought if it's consistent with the thesis. To help with that process, I'm going to read through the intro one more time in case it's hard to read or see. So it says, last year, after working at my job at a local retail store for a year, I decided to invite my coworkers over to my house for dinner. I had recently been learning to cook, and this would be a great time to try out some new dishes and enjoy an evening with the people I work with at the store. What I neglected to consider was that many of my coworkers do not get along with each other, and most of them are very opinionated. Even though my special meal was delicious, I did not enjoy it at all because of my bickering guests, who grew increasingly angry at one another as the evening went on. While I was still enjoying cooking, I have decided to be more careful about who I invite for dinner in the future. The dinner I hosted for my coworkers was the worst meal I have ever experienced due to all the strife between my guests, and from this experience, I have found that food does not always bring people together, and that too many opinionated people can ruin even the most delectable of meals. Here's the thesis. Based on my experience with my disastrous coworker dinner, I have learned to only invite good-natured guests to my table. All right, so your challenge is to write a conclusion for that intro, and I'll have the assignment up on Canvas. All right, this was our first writer's workshop of the semester, and I hope that it was helpful. Of course, as always, please do contact me if you have questions or need clarification. Do know that I, again, as you know, as I've already put in Canvas, I have office hours on Mondays and Thursdays. So this Monday was Labor Day, so I didn't have the on this day, but I do still have it on Thursdays from 11:30 to 12:30. That's just drop in. You can just call or text, and I will pick up the phone or text you or whatever, and we will chat. And I'd be glad to talk about your paper or any other questions that you might have. And if for some reason I'm talking to another student, I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. And if that doesn't work for you, please contact me, and I'd be glad to just set up an appointment for a time that's convenient for you. All right, this was really fun. It was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. And mostly I hope that it was helpful to help you to organize your ideas and know how to structure your first narrative essay for the class. All right, take care.